Well, good evening. I want to greet each of you in Jesus' name. This is a place I've never been, and most of you, perhaps almost all of you, I don't know. He asked if I'd give a brief word of introduction, and I'll keep it brief. I grew up not far from here. I grew up on the other side of Cochranton. My parents were not Mennonite. They are not Mennonite to this day. I started attending the Conservative Conference Church in Cochranton about 30 years ago. And then my wife and I, we lived in Abbeville for a great number of years. That's where she's from, Abbeville, South Carolina. And about 20 years ago, we moved to Virginia as a church plant from Abbeville. The only connection that I can directly draw with this congregation is that you had someone named Tim Nisley here, and he married a girl from our congregation, and then our son married her sister. But that's kind of a tenuous connection. For work, I work for Anabaptist Financial. As I get older, I'm kind of changing what I do for them, but that's what I do. I'm here tonight with a set of messages that I have preached before. It is said that sometimes leftovers are better the second time around, and sometimes they are not. But I trust there's something here that's useful. I had planned to have a children's class tonight, and then I went and forgot the thing that was going to be the object lesson for the children's class. The topic we're looking at tonight really is more for the older people here, not for the children. So I brought along some of the children's books that we produce at AF. The usher has them in the back. And if you are of the age that you normally would go to children's class, if we had children's class, you would be one of the ones that would come for children's class. You can take one of those books. He'll pass them out to you. You can do it now. And then you're welcome to look at those. And then there are some Bible memory verses in the back. And if you get done with the book, you could be studying on those Bible memory verses in the back. The topic tonight, I questioned in my mind, is it a topic or is it a sermon? Part of it is like a topic, and part of it is more like a sermon. It is directed toward the older people. And I'm going to address three groups of people tonight. You can decide for yourself which of these three groups you fall into. I want to talk in the beginning to older people, and then I'm going to talk to those of you who are young married, and then lastly, we're going to spend some time talking to those of you who consider yourself young. And again, you can pick where you fit. Turn your Bibles to 2 Kings chapter 20. 2 Kings chapter 20. Second Kings 20. And here we find a story about King Hezekiah. The prophet was sent to the king, and he was sent with instructions to deliver a message. It was not a happy message. The message was that you are going to die. If you look in verse 2, the king was told, "Set thine house in order, for thou shalt die and not live." And those words can kind of come off the page, and they are applicable to you. Set your house in order, for you shall die and not live. If you know the story that was told there in 2 Kings 20, you know that Hezekiah was upset about that news. He prayed to God, and he was given some extra years. But the fact remains that Hezekiah died. Hezekiah is not alive today. He's no longer with us. He did die. The prophecy did come true. He just had more time than was originally planned. He was told to set your house in order. When it says set your house in order, that just means your own affairs, and you are to do something about your own affairs. You're to take some proactive measures. You're doing something intentionally to improve your life and the way that your life is laid out. And that's what we're going to look at tonight. We're going to look at how older people can work to set their house in order. We're going to look at how young married people can intentionally try to set their house in order. And then lastly, we want to look for young people. How can you intentionally work to set your house in order? In James chapter 4, we are commanded to make all of our plans in the context of Lord willing. We are to plan, but we are to understand that God is sovereign and that our plans can change at any time. God expects us to be responsible. He expects us to think ahead, but all of the plans that we do make are made with the understanding that God may have something different in mind. And if he changes our plans, we're not going to be balky and we're not going to get upset and we're not going to stomp our feet. We're going to adjust with changes that God brings into our life. Several different New Testament passages tell us to think soberly. This simply means that we are at times in our life to be serious-minded people. We are to be setting our house in order. You're not doing that just in 5 minutes. It's something you're working on. I'm setting my house in order. I'm making my life orderly. I'm supposed to do it in the context of Lord willing, understanding that God might intervene and change my plans, and I need to adjust to that. But I am to be thinking soberly about this. It's a serious work, and I'm to get busy doing this. Life is serious, and decisions do have consequences. This first part of the message tonight is what I consider to be more like a topic for older people. If you consider yourself an older person, I think you need to be realistic about the stage of life that you're in. It is time for you to start thinking soberly about where you're at in life, how much time might be left, and what you need to get done between now and the however long that is. The Bible tells us that there's a time for different types of things. And if you are an older person sitting here tonight, it's time for you to start setting your house in order. I think over the years when you were raising children, many times you told your children to pick up after themselves. It is surprising how many older people do not pick up after themselves. Their children have to come along behind them and pick up the pieces that mom and dad did not take care of. So the focus in the first part of the message tonight is for the older people. You are to set your house in order. You are to start picking up after yourself. I have 3 questions for you if you're older people tonight. And if you have a pen and something to write with, I'd like you to write these 3 questions down. They are questions that you should answer for yourself. And if you're in the generation right below there, maybe you are young married, you're middle-aged, and you have parents that you consider to be older, maybe in a week or so, you can go and ask them, are you answering any of those questions that you older people were supposed to answer? Or are you just assuming that I will have to pick up after you if you don't answer the questions? Question number 1 for the older people. Are you intentionally and steadily simplifying your estate? Are you intentionally and steadily, it's happening, are you intentionally and steadily simplifying your estate? Do you understand that debt greatly complicates the settling of any estate? When an old person dies and they have debt, somebody is left to clean up a mess. Often it can be cleaned up because there are assets that can be sold or money that can be rearranged, but it is an unnecessary complication for most people. Some people get in the habit of kicking a can down the road. There is something that could be taken care of, but I don't want to take care of it right now because I want other things. Therefore, I am not going to pay off all my debts because I like going to Florida, or I want this yet, or I need that yet. Older people should not, if they are able, have debt. Older people should move towards simple assets. Older people should own cash, cash equivalents, and perhaps real estate. They should not have complicated investments. They should not have complicated business entanglements, because someone is going to have to clean all of that up, and it's much better if you clean that up in your lifetime. Older people should resolve any undefined or complicated issues in their life. I want to give you a couple of practical examples. These are things that come off of Richie's to-do list. Years ago, my brother-in-law and I bought a piece of land together. We divided that piece of land up, and they took the house and some of the acreage, and we just took acreage. You know how it is that after a while you realize you didn't do something right. And I realized that we didn't draw this property line between our two parcels just right. There was a piece of ground, only a quarter acre, that it made a whole lot more sense for that quarter acre to be on my side of the line than on his side of the line. I talked to him about it, and he entirely agreed. Yes, we should have drawn the property line a little crooked right there because of the way the land lays. And let's go ahead and straighten that out. I made a deal with him. I gave him some compensation, and he gave me the quarter acre of land. That was about 18 years ago. We never deeded over the quarter acre of land. It has worked out fairly well for me because I use it and he pays taxes on it for 18 years. Okay? But we never settled that. My little orchard is on that quarter acre of ground. I park my hay on that quarter acre of ground, and we never deeded it from his property to my property. Well, what happens? What do my boys have to do if I die? They have to work it out with his girls. And could they do that? I'm 100% certain they could do that. But I talked to him about that recently, and I said, you know what? That is something that I shouldn't leave for my boys to straighten out. You know you sold me a quarter acre of ground. I know that I bought a quarter acre of ground. I've just been lazy. I never got my stuff done. But before I die, I need to get that done. Because should I just leave that for my boys to straighten out? He and I also happen to own a tractor together and a set of implements. It has worked fine for many, many years. It's our tractor, not his tractor, not my tractor. We live close to each other. We get along, I would say, very well for brother-in-laws. It works fine that we have a tractor. But what about when I die and he dies? Whose tractor is that? Does that tractor now belong to 8 people instead of to 2 people? That is something that we need to settle out. We talked about it, and we came to an agreement about how that would be settled out. If you're an older person and you have some complicated or undefined things in your life, who do you think ought to clean that up? Do you think your boy ought to have to clean that up, or your daughter? Or do you think you ought to clean that up and not leave that for them? Older people should initiate transitions sooner rather than later. Your mind can immediately go to business life. Dad's in the business, maybe dad founded the business. The boys might be partners in it, or they might not be partners yet. Dad's not going to live forever. So he's not going to own this business forever, and he might as well start getting out of it right now if he is an older person. Don't leave it for the children to have to sort out after you're gone. Do it while you're still have a sound mind and you're able to do something else in life. There actually is a good model in the Amish church system, in the Amish culture, where dad turns it over to the son. whether it's the business or whether it's the farm, dad turns it over, and then dad works for the son if he wishes to continue working. He's the hired boy around the place, and sometimes he works when it suits him, and when it doesn't, he doesn't. Initiate transitions sooner rather than later. I think this also flows over into church life as well. I don't think it is wise to maybe set a mandatory retirement age for ministers. That sounds kind of Protestant to me. But it is reasonable that you are not as capable when you are older as you were when you were younger. You may have more experience and you may have gained some wisdom over the years, but someone else is also able to lead. In the church setting, you need to be developing younger men in the ministry so that the older leaders, in a responsible way, can turn the leadership over to them. They can still be there to support them, to give them counsel as they request or need counsel, but leadership all needs to transition. Older people, you need to do this sooner rather than later. You older people, you need to think about adjusting your living arrangements. And I say you older people, but I put myself in that category. So these are all things that I am having to work on. Adjusting living arrangements to meet your present needs. It has been observed that young families with lots of children tend to live in small houses. And in our day and age, old people bumble around in big houses all by themselves. That does not quite make sense. Older people should not live in large empty houses. They should make other arrangements, perhaps with their children, so that the people who only need room for 2 people in a house, an occasional company, and the grandchildren over in the evenings, can have a house that is suitable to those needs. I would encourage older people to start downsizing your stuff and property now. Estate sales are nice, but why wait if you have something in your possession that your children need and you don't really need it anymore? Why are you going to hang on to it for 15 more years? And then by that time, they don't need it anymore because they had to go buy their own. You can help your children and help yourself by downsizing now, and it makes it easier to clean up after you later. That is mostly the part about that feels like a topic. Question number 2 for you older people. Have you made any intentional decisions about inheritances? Have you made intentional decisions about inheritances? For a number of years, I've been conducting a little informal survey. When I come up across someone whose parents have passed away, I ask them, well, how did it go settling out the estate? And I'm kind of listening for their story, and then I'm making some notes. This is an informal survey. It's not scientific. It could be off. About 2/3 of the time, Amish and Mennonite people tell me that they were dissatisfied with some aspect of how their parents' estate was settled. A clear majority of the time, one or more of the children was dissatisfied with how their parents' estate was settled. So are we doing very well in this area? The answer is no. Some are probably doing well, but it's not our nature to do well with inheritances. There's dissatisfaction on those on the receiving end, largely because of favoritism and inequality. God's intention is that parents would bless and not burden their children. Turn your Bibles to 2 Corinthians chapter 12. 2 Corinthians chapter 12. 2 Corinthians chapter 12. Go down to verse 14. We're not aware that the Apostle Paul was married or that he had children, but he acted like a father to the church, and particularly to Timothy. He called him his beloved son. He had father-like characteristics. Look at what he says in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 14. Behold, the third time I am ready to come to you, and I will not be burdensome to you. For I seek not yours, but you. For the children ought not to lay up for the parents, but the parents for the children. And I will very gladly spend and be spent for you, though the more abundantly I love you, the less I be loved. His focus was, it's about the children. I'm looking out for the children. I'm willing to expend myself, even if it doesn't feel like I'm getting adequate appreciation, because I love these children. He was speaking of children in the Lord, but if it applies to children in the Lord, then it applies to children in the family setting as well. That if you're an older person, the focus needs to come off of you and the focus needs to go on to the children. What is better for the children at this stage of my life and of our family life? I think at the age that we older people are approaching, financial decisions need to be made with the children's interest at least equal to my own interest. A few years ago, my wife and I, we moved into what we consider to be our dotty house. And since we've moved in, we have talked about adding on yet. Our dotty house is not a small little place. It is comfortable. We enjoy it. But sometimes we think about adding on like a big sunroom on the side of the house, and it would give a bigger place to open up the table when all the children are home. But I have to weigh that in my mind against something else. I know that one of our children are probably going to end up with this house when we're not needing it anymore. And I know that I want to be fair in the way the estate is distributed amongst the boys. And everything I do that increases the value of this house makes it harder for the one that probably has to buy it. So, do we need the sunroom on the house? Maybe we will and maybe we won't. But we are thinking about the fact that if we put it on, we're increasing the market value of the house and we're increasing the amount that probably that youngest son is going to have to pay to the other sons to get the house. And should we do it or should we not? The scripture is very clear that inheritances may be good or inheritances may be bad. We're told in Proverbs that a good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children. We're also told in Proverbs that an inheritance may be gotten hastily at the beginning, but the end thereof shall not be blessed. You are to think intentionally about inheritances. What is good for the children? It is not always true that more money is good for the children. What is good for the children? Do understand that the very best of inheritances is a godly heritage. And that is outlined in the scripture as well, that appreciation is expressed when I had a good, godly heritage. That's the biggest inheritance you can leave to your children, a godly heritage. When it comes to the earthly things, the money and the stuff, yes, that's going to have to be left. You're not taking it with you. Yes, you will cause strife in the family if you divide it unevenly. But how much is a good inheritance for the children? And above that amount, there's plenty of needs in God's kingdom that the money can go to, and enough is left to the children to be a help to them, but we don't want to be a hindrance to them. Have you ever considered that fewer than half of Mennonites tithe on their estate? Some of them are very particular, very conscientious about tithing as they go. 10% of their paycheck is given to the Lord. But they bought a place back in the day for $38,000, and it's worth $210,000 now. It's got all that appreciated value. Are they going to tithe on that too at the end? Or does that go in the pockets of the children with no tithe paid on it? I think that special circumstances merit special consideration. If you're a family and you have a special needs child, for instance, more money ought to be left to take care of that child than is distributed to the other children. You may need a trust. You may need to appoint trustees because that child is not able to earn their own living in life and may need someone to assist them and may need a larger share of the inheritance. Third question for you older people. Have you made and clearly communicated end-of-life plans? Have you made and clearly communicated end-of-life plans? Are you making end-of-life decisions before they have to be made? Or are you thinking it's wise to postpone it until you're laying in a hospital bed, heavily medicated, and not able to easily communicate what your wishes and intentions are? When should those types of end-of-life decisions be made? It often happens at the end of a person's life that events kind of spiral out of control. You weren't planning for mom to slip and break her hip. And then she never does recover from the broken hip. It leads to another thing, which leads to another thing. And now some decisions needed to be made, but mom's life kind of spirals out of control and everyone is busy trying to take care of mom, and some decisions that needed to be made never got addressed. And now mom has passed away and she doesn't have the ability to speak into decisions that needed to be made. I think as older people, you should begin a continuing dialogue about your current reality and your present intentions. That is something I've started to do with my boys. Things like, we hope to stay in this house until what? Like, how long should mom and I be thinking that we're going to be in this house? And if something happens to me or something happens to mom, should something change then? What would the plan be if something happened to me? I think you should supply your heirs, those who are going to have to deal with your stuff, information about your general situation. I don't think by this stage of life that if you have raised your family and they are serving the Lord, there's no longer a need for big secrets about the finances. We started something a couple of years ago. We do our Christmas get together on Christmas Eve. And after we have supper, I do a little sit down with the boys. And the boys get information. I produce a balance sheet every year and I have it ready for that meeting on Christmas Eve. Here's everything mom and dad own. Here's the properties and here's what I think's the market value. These are the bank accounts. This is the savings account. This is where the money's at. These are the major assets we have. That's what they're going to have to deal with. So I'm preparing them. This is what there is. We also talk about dividing out responsibilities. It's the same little talk every year for the last couple years. Hasn't changed it yet. It might change as circumstances change. But okay, if something happens to me, the oldest son, you're responsible for mom's car. That you make sure mom has a dependable vehicle. You make sure it has tires. You make sure the oil gets changed. You're responsible for mom's car. Another son, you are responsible for everything in the house. That, if a doorknob's loose, it was your job to tighten the doorknob. If mom needs a plumber, it's your job to get the plumber. And then the other son's been told you're responsible for the things outside the house. You make sure mom's firewood gets cut. Doesn't mean you have to do it. You might have to call like a little frolic day for the brothers to cut the firewood, but you're responsible to make sure mom has firewood. You're responsible to make sure mom's grass gets cut. You're responsible that when it snows, mom's driveway gets plowed. It's your responsibility. These things need to be divided out. You need to write a will. If you are an older person and you don't have a will yet, you are a negligent person and you need to get it done. You need to go to a decent attorney. You don't have to go to a high-powered attorney. You just need to go to a good country attorney, type of person that you've trusted to do your real estate work, to represent you whenever you need an attorney, and sit down and say, we need a good, simple will to resolve our affairs. You need to put your end-of-life care wishes into writing. So if you are in bad shape, medically speaking, would you want them to resuscitate you? Would you want to be put on life support? Yes or no? What do you want? And there are good resources out there that if you go to the attorney to get your will fulfilled, you can say, well, I would like some end-of-life care directives as well, so that I can decide what I want to happen to me at the end. I think it is unfair to put that on the children, that mom or dad never said what they wanted, and now the doctor's looking at us, and I don't want him to suffer, but who wants to be the one to say, pull the plug on mom? No, it's a whole lot better if mom said, this is what I do want at the end, and this is what I do not want. That's something you can do as a kindness for your children. You can put it in writing. And then it's not the emotional sister against the pragmatic brother. It's mom said that mom would like to have this type of care, and she wants to draw the line right here. That is something you are able to do for your children. You should make and update your funeral plans. If you're an older person, you should know who the pallbearers are. You should be able to give some direction. You know, what were my favorite songs? This is who I would like to have preach the funeral message. That's a kindness you can do for your children. I've been on the preacher end of it where someone has died and you have to go sit with the family 12 hours or 24 hours later and try to put together a funeral. How much easier if they go into the gun safe? Well, here's Dad's funeral plan right here. This is who he wanted to ask to preach, and this is the backup in case that preacher's not available. And he doesn't care what songs you sing, except he does want number 214. And he wanted the nephews to be the pallbearers. Okay, that's helpful to children. And that's something you actually can get done just by deciding to do it. One last piece of suggestion for you older people. You should compile and organize all of your key financial information into one place. This is something I was taught to do, learned to do. In our gun safe, my gun safe, we have a binder. All of the boys know where that binder is. It's a 3-ring binder, has all these papers in it, has sections in it. You open up the binder, and the first page in the binder tells where all the money's at. This much money's in this checking account, this much is in this checking account, this much is in a CD, this much is here. And I update it every couple weeks. There's a new that piece of paper is never more than a couple weeks old. So that if something happens to Dad, they don't have to scramble around and try to find money for Mom. They open the folder, that's where the money's at, right there. That has a balance sheet in it. As of the December 31st last year, these were Dad's assets. Everything is spelled out. The deeds to our property are there, along with some information about the property. The septic system is located such and such, such and such, and such and such. Because boys don't ever pay attention to that. Well, the septic system was over there somewhere. Well, somebody needs to know where the septic system is. Vehicle titles are there. The bank accounts are there. The will is there. Specific bequest. Grandpa's shotgun goes to this person. Paper is there that has our passwords for our online accounts so that they know how to finish up our things. That is something you can do. It takes a little bit of work, but you can get it done. Okay, I want to switch to the young married people. I don't have as much for you, but I do have 3 questions for you as well. And if you consider yourself young married yet, you write these down. And then husband can ask wife about it, and wife can ask husband about it. First question for young married people. Have you quit acting like teenagers yet? The scripture says, set your house in order. Are you setting your house in order? Have you quit acting like teenagers yet? Do you get up and go to bed at reasonable hours? Do you spend several evenings a week at home doing the things that need to be done? This is called everyday family life. Do you understand that children thrive in structure? That supper is always about a certain time. And when they go to supper, they have a chair that is their chair. And they know when you have family devotions. Do you have structure in your family? Teenagers often don't have structure in their life. They are making it up minute by minute as they go through life. If you're a young married person, the time is over to be making it up minute by minute. For the sake of the children, you need to develop structure. Do your children understand that your hobbies revolve around them? Maybe you really enjoy hunting, but why do you go hunting? Is it for dad or is it for the boys? Is it family or is it about dad? What's Saturday at your house? Do the children understand, if you're young married, that Saturday is their day? It is family day. Dad does have to work. He's gone most of the day, most of the days of the week, but on Saturday we get our dad. Have you quit acting like teenagers? Second question for you young married people. Could you honestly say that you invest yourself into this church? Could you honestly say that you invest yourself, not you attend, not that you're members, do you invest yourself into this church? Do your little children know that you prioritize church attendance? If there is church, do the children, they just know that you're going to church? It might be an indicator if the children ask, are we going to church? Or do the children just know, if it's Wednesday night and there's prayer meeting, unless you are almost dead, we are going to church. And if you are that sick, maybe you can stay home, but we go to church in this family. Do your children know that you go to church on time? Which means you are in there sitting down and quiet by the time it starts. Not walking in the door after the song started. Do the children understand that you prioritize church? We're going to be there, and we're going to be there on time. In church, do you ask what you can do to help? Do you look for things to do, things that need to be done in church? Or do you have to be asked to do something before you do it? If you go into the restroom and there's a paper towel laying on the floor, do the children know? I mean, they would just know Dad's going to stoop over and pick that up. Because you don't go into the restroom at church and see a paper towel on the floor and not pick it up. And that's the least of the examples. It goes up from there as far as helping people. Do the children know that if somebody in church needs help, yeah, of course Dad's loading us up and we're going. That's where we'll be doing our family time on Saturday. We'll be over at so-and-so's house cutting firewood. Because somebody in church needed help. And if somebody in church needed help, we didn't have to be asked. We just showed up. Do you conscientiously support the church standards? Or do your parents know, or do your children know that you are pushers, that you push the line? Do you conscientiously support church standards? Are you willing to give and receive counsel? That's something we say about ourselves. Yes, I'm willing to give and receive counsel. Well, give and receive counsel, break that down. That means you are willing to talk to somebody else in church if you see something in their life and feel they need to be addressed. You're not going to, well, the preachers will take care of it. No, if I saw it, I'm the one that should go talk to the person about it. Not in a proud way. I need to go humbly. I need to go with the right attitude. But if I'm the one that saw it, or I'm the one that heard it, or I'm the one that knows about it or figured it out, I need to take responsibility to proactively do something because this is our church and I care about it. The other side of that coin is receiving counsel, that when someone comes to talk to me, I will receive it. I'm not going to put up my defenses. I'm not going to shoot back and hit the thing in their life that isn't 100%. I am willing to receive counsel when someone else has it to give to me. You young married people, investing yourself in the church. Do you take an interest in weaker or dependent members in the church? Are you hospitable? Are you one of the families in church that you have company as much as possible because people need fellowship? And particularly, there are some people in the church that need it more than others, and we will actually have them over even more often. We will go out of our way to do things with them. Question number 3 for you young families. If you have or expect to have children, have you named legal guardians for them yet? You're going to have a will to do this. You might, as a younger person, think, I don't need a will. That's for the old people to have wills. In the state of Pennsylvania has default provisions for people who don't get it done, people who don't decide where their things go. The Commonwealth will work that out for you. Do you know that if you don't have guardianship provisions established for your minor children under the age of 18, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania will also work that out for you. A judge in Pennsylvania, if you die without naming legal guardians for a minor children, a judge will decide who gets your children. He does not have to honor your family's wishes. He by no means will consult your church. A judge will decide. In the day and age in which we live, I think that's profoundly unwise to leave it to that. When if you go to an attorney and you have a will created, you are able to pick the family that will receive your children in the sad circumstances where both mom and dad have passed away. I have been on the unfortunate side of that, in that I have had to help with situations where mom and dad died together and they did not name guardians for their children. That is an unpleasant, unhappy situation in which to be. In both of the cases, it did work out in the end, but it leaves great uncertainty for those children. Where am I going to go? Who is going to be my mom? And that is very unfair to have that done to children when it does not have to be that way. If you are interested in some information on that, I can get you a will organizer, and it has a little educational section in there about how you pick guardians. You just need to ask for it. And lastly tonight, I want to talk for a few minutes to the youth. Youth, you need to set your house in order too. You need to recognize your stage of life and accept responsibility for where you're at in life. The book of Ecclesiastes tells us there's a time for many different kinds of things, and there's a time to stop being a child. You have been a child in your life, and that's fine. It is fine for children to be children. But when you start being 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, you are not children anymore. You are young adults. You are young people. And it takes a different level of responsibility. I got 3 questions for yuns who are young people as well. Question number 1. Have you made the decision to get serious about serving God? Have you made the decision to get serious about serving God? Listen to how the prophet Jeremiah said it. This is God being so kind to you. He's reaching out to you. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. Then shall ye call upon me, and ye shall go and pray unto me, and I will hearken unto you. And ye shall seek me and find me, when ye shall search for me with all your heart, and I will be found of you. The words, I will be found of you, I will let you find me. Those words come after when ye search for me with all your heart. It does not get easier to choose God when you get older. It only gets harder to choose God. Patterns of sin and self-will get hardened in your life. There is no better time to decide that you are going to be serious about serving God than where you are at sitting in that bench right there, right now. Now is the golden opportunity of your entire life to be serious about serving God. In Mark chapter 4, it says this way, and these are they which are sown among thorns, such as hear the word. That's you. You've heard the word. I'll bet you hear it here every Sunday. They've heard the word, and the cares of this world, and the deceitfulness of riches, and the lust of other things entering in, choke the word, and it becometh unfruitful. Have you ever given yourself up to God as a young person? This actually applies to all of us here, the older ones as well. But have you ever given yourself up to God? There is a good old German word, Gelassenheit, and it describes a deep peace that comes after you give yourself up. If you wonder, what does God have for me in life? What does God want me to do? He says that I will let you find me. It's not like hide and seek and he hid in such a hard place you're not going to find him. He says, I will let you find me, but I will only do it after you look for me with all your heart. You have to give up everything else. You just have to give yourself up. And when you give yourself up, you can find a peace that is deeper than any you have ever known. Have you ever done that? Have you given up your goals and your desires and what you think in life and just, God, I just want whatever you want. I just give up. Question number 2 for you younger people, you youth. As you begin to intentionally choose your friends, whom are you choosing? As you begin to intentionally choose your friends, whom are you choosing? You're not children anymore. When you were children, your parents chose your friends for you. Your friends were the children of your parents' friends. Your friends were the children at the school where your parents chose to send you. Your friends were the little ones that were running around in the parking lot with you at the church where your parents chose to go. But you're not children anymore. And now you have to start choosing your own friends. Most young people make new friendships. That's not very earth-shattering, is it? You know, once you're young, now you have a vehicle and now you go places. I don't know if the young people here go to Bible school, but I taught at a Bible school for many years, and it was remarkable. a 3-week Bible school, students coming from many different states. By the second night, they found their friends. The Wilder bunch, they all found each other in 24 hours. They sniffed each other out. The cream of the crop, they were all sitting in the gym together over in the corner. Birds of a feather don't take very long to flock together. As you are choosing new friends, be very careful whom you are choosing. I would encourage you not to drop all of your old friends. The friends that you had when you were children, those friends were in essence chosen by your parents, who were looking out for your best interest. They did have good intentions in where they took you to church and sent you to school. Don't drop all your old friends. The old saying is, make new friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other is gold. You will make new friends in life. Be careful who you choose. Recently, a young man was talking to an older man, and he made this statement: I have no real friends. And the older man, it was actually a middle-aged man in his 30s, he thought about that, and then he replied. He said, a good part of the problem you have is what you've chosen to do about church. The young man recognized he didn't have a lot of friends. I suspect on social media he had many friends, hundreds of friends. You know what lonely people do? Lonely people hide behind phones. That's what lonely people do. And if you subtracted out all of your what are called sometimes laugh out loud friends, the people who say meaningless things in social media communications, if you subtracted all of those out of your life and you only had left the ones that were true friends that you could talk to face and look in the eye, and they understand who you are and you can tell them how they feel and they would tell you the truth about yourself, how many would you have left? Do you have friends that will tell you the truth about yourself? And you can speak the truth to them as well. Friends require effort on your part, but that effort yields great rewards. In Proverbs, we're told, a man that hath friends must show himself friendly. You have to go work if you want to have friends. Friends aren't casual. Friends require work and investment. There is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother. The friends you choose to keep will determine who you become. As iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friends. You will become like the company you keep. Who are you choosing? Third and last question for the night, for the young people. It's very similar to the question, one of the questions for the young marrieds. As a young person, are you committed to and investing in this church? Are you committed to this church? Have you made that commitment yet? Are you investing in this church? Years ago, I took a load of folks up to Bald Eagle Boys Camp from Lancaster, and they took us a tour of the campsites there. Maybe some of you have been to a boys camp before. The boys live in the woods, and these are troubled boys. They have problems they're working through in life. Maybe it's family issues, personal issues. But they live in the woods in these groups, and they build their own tents or structures to live in. They cut saplings and bend them and tie them together and tie tarps on. And one of the gentlemen standing next to me, when they opened it up for questions, he made an observation. He said, I noticed something here at these campsites. You're not using like nails or screws. You're tying things together. And you use like hay bale twine and not the plastic stuff. It's got to deteriorate in a little bit of no time. Wouldn't it be smarter to use the plastic twine? to hold the tents together. And Brian Martin, he said, I'm glad you asked that question. You're a very observant person. We intentionally use the twine that deteriorates around here because we know something. We know that a boy will not tear down something that he built. We want these tents to be constantly falling apart so that the boys who live in them have to be constantly working on them. I think you can take that principle and apply it to church in some respects. If the young people in this church are actually needed to help build this church, it's a lot less likely they will ever act to tear down the church because they become part of the church by working here, interacting, and being needed. As a young person, you can't do everything there is to do in this church, but do you do everything that you can do in this church? If you're asked to do a responsibility, is it complaining or is it, yeah, I'll try. I don't think I'm the best one for it, but if you ask me to do it, I'll try. I'll do it. Do you take responsibility in this church that if you see a person who's struggling, that you try to befriend them? You try to mentor them. You try to be the good influence. You try to be the word of encouragement to the person that you noticed is looking sad. Are you doing what you can do to build this church? This idea of committing and investing to church. Maybe you're thinking, well, I'm not ready to make that decision yet. I don't know if I want to end up here or not. Do you know that not deciding is actually a decision? It's a no decision. It's a decision that no, I'm not, and maybe I'll change my mind later. Recognize it for what it is. In the book of Acts, we see a picture of a church that was full of people that were fully invested. Listen to what it says about how people felt about their church. Then they that gladly received his word were baptized. And the same day there were added unto them about 3,000 souls. And they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship, and in breaking of bread, and in prayers. And fear came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were done by the apostles. And all they that believed were together, and had all things common, and sold their possessions and goods, and parted them to all men, as every man had need. And they, continuing daily with one accord in the temple, and breaking bread from house to house, did eat their meat with gladness and singleness of heart, praising God. And then in the book of Hebrews, let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering, for he is faithful that promised. And let us consider one another to provoke unto love and to good works, not forsaking the assembling of yourselves together, as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. The older people, the young marrieds, the youth, the Bible admonition is to set your house in order. That means that you look at your own life, and the things that I need to fix in my life, I can't fix them in 5 minutes. It's not all going to be perfect in a day, but I am going to intentionally work on my own life, and with God's help, I'm going to set my life in order. I'll call for a song, and then the ministry can close however they see fit.